My name is Elizabeth. I am a domestic violence counselor and advocate from Connections for Abused Women and Children, or CAWC. This is CAN TV's Hotline 21. For the next 20 minutes, I will be talking about domestic violence and the work that I do with Connections for Abused Women and Children. This is a live interactive show, and you can call in to ask questions and participate in the discussion at any time. The number to call in is 312-738-1060, and it should also be displayed at the bottom of your screen. At CAWC, I am a counselor advocate in the Hospital Crisis Intervention Project, or HCIP. HCIP is a program located at John Stroger Hospital and at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The goals of HCIP are: number one, to provide quality on-site crisis intervention and counseling to domestic violence survivors at the moment they're seeking medical care. Two, to train healthcare providers to identify, assess, and effectively refer victims of abuse to our program and to other programs. And three, to improve the healthcare system's response to domestic violence victims through training and outreach. And so the way our program works is that doctors, nurses, social workers, any medical staff, if they're working with a patient who discloses domestic violence, they connect them with us, and we are able to provide on-site services. We provide crisis intervention, counseling, connect them with resources as needed. CAWC as an organization has many other services, including counseling, shelter, legal advocacy, children's services, and support groups. To learn more information about our services, you can visit our website at CAWC, which I'm going to put on the screen now. This is the CAWC website, and you can find our hotline information right here. So this is our 24-hour hotline, number 773-278-4566. We have advocates available 24 hours a day to speak with you, connect you with resources, connect you with shelter, provide advocacy, sort of whatever you need in the moment, 24 hours a day. Today I'm going to talk about domestic violence, what it looks like, different forms abuse can take, some common myths and misconceptions about domestic violence, and how to help a friend if they're in that situation. We're going to start by defining domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior in any relationship that is used by one person to gain or maintain power and control over another person. Domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. This includes behaviors that intimidate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, coerce, threaten, or injure someone. The language I used in this presentation will often be the survivor as a woman, the perpetrator or abuser as a man. I do want to acknowledge that domestic violence can occur, a woman can be an abuser, it can occur among same-sex relationships. However, the majority of the relationships that we see are a male abuser and a female survivor, and so I just want to explain why I'm using that language up front. A lot of people think that abuse is only physical. However, abuse can take many different forms in a relationship. Often I've seen with my clients that the emotional and psychological forms of abuse can cause the most long-lasting harm. Feeling stupid or worthless, and just that little voice in their head telling them that they're not good enough, which often is a message that they're receiving on every day from their abuser. And even after leaving the relationship, it's just, in their head, and something that we work on in counseling together. I'm going to put up a tool I use with clients called the Power and Control Wheel, and this wheel illustrates the many forms that abuse can take. Relationship violence is often a combination of a number of different tactics of abuse that are used to maintain power and control, which are the words you see in the very center of this wheel. The center is surrounded by different sets of behaviors that an abusive partner uses in order to maintain this power and control. A lot of these behaviors can feel subtle and normal and are often unrecognizable until you look at the wheel in this way. A lot of these behaviors happen at the same time, and all of them are used to reinforce power within the relationship. And so this wheel is really a diagram of the tactics that an abusive partner uses to keep someone in the relationship. The inside of the wheel you see is kind of subtle, more continual behaviors, so things like emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming, economic abuse. The outer ring represents physical and sexual violence. These are the abusive acts that are more overt and forceful, and often these intense acts that reinforce regular use of other subtler methods of abuse. And so I think it's just important to note that physical and sexual abuse may not happen as often as these others, but they're really used to reinforce those daily control tactics. And so with the power control wheel, we see there are many different types of abuse displayed here. I do want to highlight just a couple that people may not think of when they think of abuse in a relationship. Economic abuse and control is a huge issue that I see in my clients' relationships. Economic abuse often leads to clients becoming dependent on their abusers, which makes it so difficult for them to leave the relationship. I also see this manipulation in a lot of my clients who are concerned about making the abuser angry if they leave the relationship or file for an order of protection. They're worried that their abuser is going to come to their job and threaten their economic livelihood, which is really common. We see abusers coming and threatening their coworkers, threatening them at work, causing a scene, and getting the survivor fired. This also comes through, economic abuse comes through in other ways, like the abuser paying for the cell phone or other bills and then having access to their partner's personal and financial information. So, using that to track if they're contacting somebody or, accessing their benefits. I've seen that happen with my clients before. I had a client recently actually who told me about how her partner convinced her to go off of her parents' insurance and go on his insurance, another way that he created sort of a dependence of her onto him through financial means. Another complicated form of power and control in these relationships is the abuser isolating their partner from other forms of support. So many of the people that I work with feel that they have no one in their lives they could turn to for support during this abusive relationship. A lot of times this is related to clients feeling shame about being in an abusive relationship and not knowing how to talk to their friends or family, or being worried that their friends or family may not understand what they're going through. Often, too, abusers will distance their partners from friends or family, wanting their partner to be completely dependent on them. And sometimes in the beginning of a relationship, this can be the abuser pitting friends and family against the survivor, creating sort of an us versus them dynamic, especially if friends or family are criticizing the partner. The abuser can say, they just don't understand us or our relationship, and it can create distance that leads to isolation down the line. I use this wheel as a way to show the clients I work with the many different forms abuse can take. When I meet with someone, it's really common for them to downplay their experience or say it's not that bad if there isn't physical violence or if there's only been 1 or 2 instances of physical violence. Using the wheel can help them see different tactics their abuser may be using in the relationship. And sometimes it can be hard to identify behavior that is controlling, especially if it's something that the partner is living with every day. Also, if it's been an escalation, the isolation, if it starts with the abuser just wanting them to hang out with them all the time, leading to a situation which the survivor is completely dependent and isolated from everybody else. The power control wheel also helps universalize their experience too, and helps my clients feel less alone and understand that the tactics that their abuser uses, other people experience as well. You are currently watching Hotline 21 on CAN TV. I'm Elizabeth, the domestic violence advocate from Connections for Abused Women and Children, and today we're talking about domestic violence and what that looks like in relationships. Please feel free to call in and join the conversation by calling 312-738-1060. I'm also going to put up the information from my agency again so you know how to get in touch with us. Here again is our hotline number, 773-278-4566. You can call that number 24 hours a day and speak with an advocate. I now want to sort of pivot and talk about some common myths about domestic violence. I think one of the most common is that it is easy, or just the only thing the survivor must do is leave the relationship. I've mentioned a few reasons why this isn't true already. One main reason is that lack of resources. Many people who live with their abuser may have nowhere else to go. Part of this may be because they have moved with their abuser and are far away from friends or family, another common isolation tactic. Also, there are a very small number of beds in domestic violence shelters. I hear from a lot of people when I'm talking about my job, like, why don't they just go to shelter? And often, all the shelter beds are taken, and so they're not able to go somewhere safe if they do want to leave. Survivors may not have someone to stay with due to isolation, and they also may not have the financial resources to get their own housing due to financial abuse and control, especially if they have kids. Staying can feel easier than the threat of sleeping on the street. Another reason leaving is so difficult is that leaving a relationship is often the most dangerous time for survivors in relationships. We always say our clients are the experts on keeping themselves safe, and often clients know that the most dangerous thing they can do is leave the relationship. At this time, abusers experience a complete loss of control and may resort to extreme acts and extreme violence. In Chicago, in 40% of cases in which a woman was killed by her partner, an immediate precipitating factor was her leaving the relationship. When my clients talk to me about wanting to leave the relationship, that involves a lot of safety planning by us. So trying to come up with sort of logistical plans and also just assessing the danger of the situation. It can be a really long ongoing conversation before the survivor feels like it's safe enough for them to leave. Another common myth about domestic violence is that abuse is caused by the abuser drinking or using drugs. While the research does indicate a connection between substance use and violence, there is no research that says drinking directly causes violence. Substance abuse is often an excuse abusers will use to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. When safety planning with clients, we definitely talk about the impact that drugs and alcohol have on their partner, because we recognize that it can make the abuse more dangerous, it can make the situation more volatile. But an abuser getting help for their substance use without also taking accountability for their abusive behavior will not end the violence in the relationship. Also, we know many people who use substances do not abuse their partners. Another myth is the idea that abusers are inherently violent people. In fact, abusers are often incredibly charming, and when not alone with their partner, are able to hide their violence around other people. Violence is a choice that abusers make, and they're often very careful about when they choose to be violent. And this is really a tactical thing for them. This makes it difficult for the survivor to be believed when they disclose violence to somebody else. Their friends or family may say they've never seen him be violent, that doesn't sound like him. And so it's really important to remember if someone discloses violence to you, just because you haven't seen him be violent doesn't mean that he isn't. It's also a way it's a way abusers make their survivors feel crazy or gaslight them, because they see them be so charming in front of everybody else, and then it's almost like a switch flips when they choose to use violence. The last myth I want to address is that victims do things that cause the violence they experience. Domestic violence is never the victim's fault. We always say it is an intentional choice made by the abuser to use violence and coercion. Victims do not choose to be abused. They do not like the abuse secretly. They this is all a choice that the abuser makes. And just to reiterate, you're watching Hotline 21 on CAN TV. I'm Elizabeth, the domestic violence advocate from Connections for Abused Women and Children. Our agency has numerous services, including shelter, counseling, legal advocacy. If you do want to access those services, I'm going to put that up on the screen again. You can call our domestic violence hotline number there at 773-278-4566 and get help 24 hours a day. And now I want to talk about how you can support someone, a friend or family member, who may be in an abusive relationship. Abusers tend to isolate their partners and make them feel like they can't talk to anyone about the abuse. So checking in with friends can be a really powerful way to make them feel less alone and help them get connected with services and help them get out of the relationship if that's what they want to do. There are certain warning signs a friend or family member may be in an abusive relationship that you should keep an eye out for. If you see their partners putting them down in front of others, if you notice their partner is extremely jealous or possessive and they're constantly worried about making their partner upset, or maybe it's a disproportionate reaction by their partner to something that doesn't seem like that big a deal to you. If you notice physical marks or injuries, or if you notice that they have started to stop spending time with their friends or family and they're pulling away from their support network. These are all potential signs that they're in an abusive relationship, and it may be worth checking in with them to see how they're doing. When we talk to medical staff about screening for violence, we always recommend just saying, like, I've noticed something going on. I just want to make sure that it's safe for you at home. And so asking sort of general questions and really letting the person tell you how they're feeling and letting them guide the conversation. If you see something going on that's concerning to you and you do check in with your friend and they choose not to disclose that they're in a situation like that or deny that abuse is going on, respect their answer. They may not be ready to talk to you about it. They may not feel like it's safe to talk to you about it, but they know that you're asking, that you're caring, and that they may be more open to talk to you about it in the future. I think sometimes people can really press the issue and maybe feel hurt or upset if someone chooses not to disclose violence to them, and just respect the answer and let them kind of guide the conversation. If they do disclose that they are in an abusive relationship, the most important thing you can do is believe them and listen to their experience in a non-judgmental way. Let them know the abuse is not their fault and you're there for them to support them in whatever they need. I think there can be a tendency among people to want to fix the situation right away, and it's scary to hear that your friend is in an abusive relationship or experiencing violence, and you want to try to do something and think that the best thing to do is get her out of it as soon as possible or do something about it right away, go to the police or file an order of protection or something like that. But really try to just listen and hear what they need from you, hear what they're going through without, putting your own thoughts about what needs to happen in the conversation. It is so important to be non-judgmental in this situation. Survivors often feel a lot of shame and guilt from being in an abusive relationship. I hear from a lot of my clients how they feel stupid for letting themselves get into the situation, and sometimes they feel duped or manipulated by their partner. Make sure they know that you respect the choices they make, especially if they don't leave the relationship or if they go back to their abuser. Leaving an abusive relationship is incredibly challenging, and as a support for the survivor, make sure they know they can always talk to you. Don't make your support conditional on the survivor leaving the relationship. And I know that this can be frustrating when you see someone you love going back to a situation that you know is unsafe. And I hear from my clients all the time that, their friends or family was there for them in the beginning, but then they went back and they felt like their friends just didn't want to talk to them about it anymore. And that their friends kind of, started to blame them or think you could leave and you're choosing not to at this point. And so I think it's really important to just keep that in mind and recognize that, survivors are making the choices that they're making and not to add to their own judgment. A big part of, if a friend does disclose violence to them is talking to them about safety plan and helping them develop one. I know that can be scary if you don't have a lot of knowledge about what that looks like, and there are a lot of resources online. I'm going to pull up one right now. So this is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They are a great resource, both information for survivors and also for friends. So here, this is types of safety planning here. So they have a bunch of different things here, like safety while living with an abusive partner, safety planning with children, safety planning with pets, safety during pregnancy, and emotional safety planning. So there are really good suggestions on here that can help guide a conversation with your friend. Like it says here, let trusted friends and neighbors know of your situation and develop a plan and visual signal for when you need help. If you and your friend talk about this together, having a code word, so if they call you, they can disclose that it's a violent situation and it's unsafe without saying that. So they tell you the code word, to call 911 or come by and pick them up or something like that. Storing important documents or a bag at your house for your friends, different ideas like that. And so I'd encourage you to check out this website with your friend and just talking about different ideas. There is information here about leaving a relationship, as we said, is such a dangerous time. And so just really thinking about all these different aspects. Legal information. And just, I would encourage you to look through this with a friend if this is something that's going on with them. But of course, we recognize that as a friend, you don't have the skills or the knowledge that someone like I or another advocate does. And so ultimately, we would recommend encouraging them to reach out to a domestic violence agency for support and assistance. I know I've given our CAWC's hotline number multiple times. I am also going to pull up the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline so you can use that. It's a great resource. And you can call it as a friend, you can call it as a survivor, and they will let you know about available support and information, and also just provide crisis information as well. And so I'm going to put that up on the screen right now. You can see the hotline number right here, 877-863-6338. And so that is available 24/7. It also has multiple languages, and you can call it anytime to get information for yourself or for somebody else. I think another good thing to recognize as a friend who is supporting somebody through the situation is asking if they want your support through going to get services from a domestic violence agency, or going if they want to file a police report or an order of protection. Sometimes just having someone with them and to help just be with them as a support, it can be a really powerful tool. I also think it's really important to recognize your own emotional needs as well. It can be really challenging to watch someone you love stay in an abusive relationship, and make sure you're processing your feelings around the situation as well. Try to talk to someone besides a survivor about what's going on and how you're feeling about it, because you don't want to put more pressure on her by telling her how scared or sad or confused you are about the situation. Also recognize if you're feeling burned out or experiencing vicarious trauma, and take care of yourself. If you are the one person that this survivor has disclosed violence to and you feel like you're not able to be there as a support anymore, just try to check in with yourself and see what you can do, just because that can potentially save her life. Domestic violence is incredibly common. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men report experiencing physical violence in their relationships. So it is really likely that someone you know or you yourself have experienced the situation. And that's why I just wanted to talk a little bit about what to do if you're worried about a friend and what's going on with them. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please know that you are not alone and help is available. I'm going to put up that information for my agency, CAWC, again on the screen, just so you have it before I wrap up here. We have that hotline number there, 773-278-4566. Our main office is located in Humboldt Park, but like I said, we do have programs at Stroger Hospital, at Northwestern Hospital, at Haymarket, and you can get information about any of those programs calling that hotline number. And I just want to thank you so much for watching and participating in today's show. My name is Elizabeth. I'm an advocate at CAWC in the Hospital Crisis Intervention Project at Northwestern Memorial. This is CAN TV, and thank you so much.